Imagine stumbling through moonlit pines, your torch flickering against rune-scarred stones, suddenly discovering a half-sunken boat filled with skeletal horses, dogs, and a corpse dressed in finery, preserved for 1,000 years. These are not myths, they're Viking graves that chill the blood. Silver haze drifts through towering spruce, torchlight casting ghostly shadows on moss-clad burial mounds. A raven's black silhouette lands atop a ship-shaped cairn, its beak tapping a hollow rhythm against the ancient wood. Close-ups reveal rusty rivets barely clinging to decayed oar handles protruding from the earth beside bleached human bones. The whispering wind threads through pine branches like a distant, mournful chant. The damp earth presses cold against steel-toed boots with each cautious step. The hollow clink of bone striking iron echoes in the stillness, a chilling symphony of death and memory. Tonight, we unearth the creepiest Viking burial sites. Sand revealed the secrets they tried to bury forever. Pre-dawn mist swirls gently around a tick-planked longship, half buried within a grassy barrow. The air is thick with damp chill and the soft rustle of awakening woodland. Dr. Ingrid, torch in hand, kneels carefully at the mound's edge, brushing away turf with reverent caution. Her eyes widen as a dark cavity emerges beneath the soil. Nearby, Magnus, the field assistant, directs a beam of light into the pit, revealing a grinning skull framed by a horsehair bridle. Ingrid slowly lifts a weathered wooden oar, uncovering the fragile skeletal remains of a woman. Nestled in her hair is a finely carved comb, its delicate craftsmanship hinting at status long lost. Magnus's gloved finger presses gently against a rib. A faint crack echoes softly, the fragile boundary between centuries audible in the hush of the grove. A distant raven's cry punctuates the stillness. Ingrid places a hand softly on the skull and whispers, "You should have stayed buried." With practiced movements, she snaps on gloves and motions for Magnus to lower a small camera into the shadowed tomb. This moment marks not an end, but the thrilling beginning of a long-held secret's unveiling. The camera sweeps over mist curling above the longship burial site, the first light of dawn, pale and tentative. Dr. Ingrid's hands move with deliberate care as she brushes back ancient turf, the earth cold and damp beneath her fingers. Each scrape of the trowel is soft, yet resonant in the quiet morning. Magnus watches intently, shining his light into the dark pit as anticipation hums in the air. The mournful call of a raven pierces the stillness, a reminder of the grave's solemnity. Here, at the intersection of nature and history, the veil between past and present thins. Ingrid carefully lifts a wooden oar, revealing delicate skeletal remains beneath. The camera closes in on a carved comb, tangled in what remains of her hair, a symbol of her identity and status. The fragile bones and worn artifacts speak silently across time, telling stories buried beneath layers of earth. The crackle of disturbed soil and the faint clink of wood against bone accompany the scene, emphasizing the reverence and fragility of this moment. Magnus's gloved finger presses lightly against a rib bone. The subtle crack resonates like a heartbeat in the hushed space, a reminder of the fragile line that separates us from the distant past. Dust motes drift in the flickering torchlight, as every movement is measured to preserve these ancient remains. The whispers of the excavation team thread through the quiet, underscoring the urgency and respect with which they tread. Ingrid's voice drops to a whisper as she lays a hand on the skull. "You should have stayed buried." The weight of unspoken secrets hangs heavy in the air. She signals to Magnus, who lowers a small camera into the dark cavity, capturing the beginning of a story long hidden. The distant chants of the workers mingle with a fading raven's cry. creating a moment suspended between discovery and the silence of the ages. Today, we visit manicured cemeteries, flat headstones, clipped lawns, digital memorials. Viking graves were living nightmares. Boat burials rigged with traps, bog sacrifices laid in watery graves, and mass pits echoing with the cries of human sacrifice. A sleek, suburban mausoleum stands, serene roses carefully arranged, silent grounds patrolled by alert police dogs. Contrast this with a Viking burial mound. Bones half exposed beneath earth. Iron rivets glinting faintly. Peat-stained garments clinging to skeletons preserved in cold bogs. While modern traditions prefer cremated ashes stored in urns. Vikings sealed their dead within timber ships, bodies blackened and preserved by acid waters. Where we seek quiet peace in death, they sought power rituals, mixing horror and hope, binding the dead to the living world in terrifying ways. In contemporary cemeteries, order and serenity reign. Pristine lawns stretch beneath flat, polished gravestones, etched with names, dates, and even QR codes linking to digital memorial pages. Flowers are arranged with care, electronic candles flicker softly, and the atmosphere is hushed and respectful. Mourning here is a private, controlled experiencer passage, marked by silence and ritualized remembrance. The crunch of gravel underfoot, the distant tolling of church bells, and the whisper of wind through trimmed trees compose a gentle symphony honoring life's end. This calm reflects society's desire for peaceful closure, where death is tidily framed and contained. In stark contrast, Viking burial sites pulse with raw, visceral intensity. Boat gravestember vessels sunk beneath earthen mounds often concealed traps, meant to thwart grave robbers. Peat bog sacrifices lie submerged in dark waters, flesh blackened but eerily preserved, garments clinging like ghosts. Mass burial pits whisper of ritual slaughter, human sacrifice serving both as tribute and warning. Moss and peat cloak these tombs, while iron rivets gleam faintly amid bones. The air here carries the cold scent of decay and earth, mingled with ancient dread. Walking these grounds evokes a haunting reverence. Death is not a quiet rest, but a fierce assertion of power and protection beyond the grave. In stark contrast, Viking burial sites pulse with raw, visceral intensity. Boat gravestember vessels sunk beneath earthen mounds often concealed traps, meant to thwart grave robbers. Peat bog sacrifices lie submerged in dark waters, flesh blackened but eerily preserved, garments clinging like ghosts. Mass burial pits whisper of ritual slaughter, human sacrifice serving both as tribute and warning. Moss and peat cloak these tombs, while iron rivets gleam faintly amid bones. The air here carries the cold scent of decay and earth, mingled with ancient dread. Walking these grounds evokes a haunting reverence. Death is not a quiet rest, but a fierce assertion of power and protection beyond the grave. For Vikings, death was a passage, not an end. Graves were constructed as stages for the dead's journey, boats to carry them into the next world, weapons to defend status beyond life. These rituals wove horror and hope together. Traps and sacrifices intimidated lingering spirits, while offerings honored the deceased's rank and power. The longship, carved and laden with goods, floated silently amid misty marshes, a spectral vessel to the unknown. Flickering torchlight and rustling dried grass frame the somber scenes, while distant raven cries echo as reminders of mortality and the spirit world. Death was a fierce continuum, a blend of fear and faith, an eternal vigil binding the living and dead in a potent embrace. Viking burial sites were far more than cemeteries. They were elaborate stages where death, power, and cosmic order intertwined. These massive mounds and crypts served to awe and terrify the living, while communicating with gods and the spirit world. Each grave was a spectacle, crafted to project status and spiritual potency beyond death. The earth swallowed longships, sacrificed bodies, and sacred objects, not quietly, but with ritual grandeur meant to echo across time. The thunder of the elements seemed to drum in harmony with these tombs, reinforcing the sense that here, death was a cosmic event, one demanding reverence and fear alike. The most iconic Viking burials took place within colossal longships, buried beneath earth and stone. These ships were loaded not only with warriors' corpses, but also horses, hounds, weapons, and treasures, a grand procession for the afterlife. Each item symbolized status and ensured passage to the next world. CGI reconstructions reveal bodies carefully arranged amid iron swords and shields, the timbers of the ship glowing faintly as funeral fires smolder beneath. The creaking wood and clanking metal evoke both finality and ceremony. This was no simple burial, but a heroic voyage sealed in earth, where the dead sailed toward eternity crowned in power. In peat bogs, bodies were plunged into acidic waters that preserved flesh and garments in a death-like stasis, as if frozen between worlds. These wet graves often contained human sacrifices and weapons, offerings to gods demanding tribute and protection. Mist clings low over these watery tombs, where peat's pungent Thames mingles with the quiet drip of water. The unease of stepping near such sites contrasts with the fascination they inspire, remnants of a brutal ritual economy, where death was both punishment and sacred exchange. These pits are eerie time capsules, keeping the dead suspended in a liminal sleep that blurs life and afterlife. Rock-lined tombs reveal secret chambers and walls painted with eerie fresco symbols of otherworldly journeys and protection. These crypts were designed not just to house the dead, but to shield and empower them against spiritual threats. Torchlight flickers on rune-inscribed stones, casting shadows that dance across faces carved in stone. The scent of damp earth and whispers of the past fill these silent halls, creating a sense of mystery and reverence. Here, the grave becomes a gateway to the beyond, a place where the boundary between worlds thins and the power of ritual lingers in every stone. The Oseberg burial stands as one of the most exquisite Viking ship interments, Discoberta, 22-meter oak vessel intricately carved with serpents and vines, resting beneath a massive mound. Within lay the remains of two women, accompanied by horses, dogs, richly woven textiles, and a finely crafted wagon. Radiocarbon dating places this burial at a D 834, firmly within the Viking Age's golden era. The presence of two high-status women challenges assumptions about gender roles, revealing a ritual steeped in complexity and reverence. The craftsmanship reflects elite artistry, while the grave goods underscore the intertwined notions of power, spirituality, and passage to the afterlife. This tomb is a haunting tribute where feminine influence, ceremonial splendor, and the grim certainty of death converge beneath earth and timber. The Gokstad ship, discovered near Sandefjord, Norway, is a 23-meter-long warship that served as a grave for a male warrior, his sled dogs, and war gear a funeral flotilla destined for eternity. Unlike the Oseberg burial's ornamental focus, Gokstad's ship symbolizes martial prowess and status in life and death. Skeletal remains reveal a figure dressed for battle, surrounded by iron swords, shields, and hunting equipment. The ship's robust construction and the inclusion of sled dogs suggest both practicality and prestige. As 3D reconstructions reveal, this was no ordinary burial. It was a martial set-off, encapsulating the Viking ideal of honor through combat and readiness for the afterlife's unknown seas. In Estonia, the Psalm graves offer a chilling glimpse into Viking warfare and ritual sacrifice. 2 ships, sunken in the 8th century, hold the remains of 42 warriors killed in battle. Bodies are layered in decks, weapons bent and twisted to prevent looting, an act signaling respect and ritual closure. This mass burial reveals not only the brutal realities of Viking combat, but also the sacred customs surrounding death. The cold, misty bogs cradle these remains, while the water's stillness belies the violence entombed below. The sight speaks of a collective tragedy enshrined in ritual, where death serves both as sacrifice and solemn tribute. The 2011 discovery at Port en Eilean marked the first intact Viking boat burial on mainland Britain. Nestled amid Neolithic cairns, the site revealed human remains, grave goods, and a remarkable link to earlier sacred landscapes. This interment, with its close proximity to ancient monuments, suggests a continuity of ritual significance across cultures and centuries. Archaeologists uncovered weapons, tools, and remnants of the boat itself, offering insight into Viking presence in Scotland. The moorland's silence is punctuated by the whisper of ancient ceremonies, where the dead's passage intertwined with ancestral memory, creating a layered spiritual geography. Unlike the ship burials, Illerup Jadal in Denmark features massive votive deposits of over 15,000 Iron Age weapons and gear submerged in river valley bogs. No human bodies were found, but the sheer scale and deliberate destruction of weapon-spent swords. Broken shields reflect a ritualized act of dedication to the gods. These offerings represent a potent statement of warfare's sacred dimension, turning instruments of death into sacrifices for divine favor. Underwater footage reveals rusted iron mingling with peat, the still water preserving a silent testimony to the mingling of destruction, devotion, and power. Dr. Freya Lundquist, a forensic anthropologist, and Professor Leif Gunnarsson, ritual archaeologist, provide insights into how Viking burial practices meld warfare, status, and religious performance. Dr. Lundquist highlights the meticulous care in arranging bodies and grave goods to convey social hierarchy and belief. Professor Gunnarsson emphasizes the theatrical scale of sacrifice, noting how mass graves and votive deposits functioned as ritual spectacles designed to awe both gods and people. Together, they reveal Viking graves as performances of power, where death was harnessed as a message bridging earthly authority and spiritual dominion. A sweeping 3D animation takes viewers beneath the Earth's surface, layering the diverse Viking funerary landscapes, majestic ship burials capped with earthen mounds, submerged bog deposits preserving iron relics, and rock-lined chamber tombs carved deep in stone. The seamless fly-through reveals interconnected rituals of death and remembrance, underscoring the cultural fusion of warfare, sacrifice, and sanctity. A deep, resonant drone underscores the journey, fading into the silence of the grave. This immersive passage through Viking burial artistry leaves a lasting impression of a culture that embraced death as spectacle, sanctity, and eternal power. The first light of dawn seeps gently over a mist-shrouded meadow dotted with ancient burial mounds, their rounded silhouettes rising like ghosts against the awakening sky. The dig team gathers, their breaths visible in the crisp air. Equipment in hand, Dr. Ingrid unfolds detailed LiDAR maps, her fingers tracing clusters of unexcavated mounds teeming with promise. Nearby, Bjorn, the local historian, recounts whispered legends of chieftains laid to rest beneath these hills. their stories echoing in sagas and song. The fog clings to the earth, a veil over centuries of secrets, as anticipation weaves tightly among the team. Each step on the dewy grass carries wet a blend of reverence and excitement, signaling the day's solemn task. To breach time's silence and give voice to the forgotten dead. Magnus readies his camera as the sod is methodically peeled back, revealing timbers long hidden beneath moss and earth. The wood is darkened and rotten, yet remarkably intact. Carved posts etched with ancient runes emerging from the soil like fingers reaching for remembrance. The damp, earthy scent of peat rises with the soft scrape of tools. Around the pit, the team exchanges quiet glances, uncovering not just architecture but the sacred frame of a forgotten ritual space. The faint echo of hammer taps on brittle wood fills the air, underscoring the fragility of the past now breathing beneath their hands. The sacredness of this moment hums quietly, a portal opening to the stories sealed by time and earth. Elin steps cautiously into the saturated trench, her boots sinking into the thick peat with a wet squelch. The acrid, sour tank of decay mixes with the damp earth as her gloved hand brushes away mud to reveal a leather cord still knotted tightly around a neckbone, soft organic material preserved against all odds. Her breath catches. "It's like finding a ghost," she whispers, reverence tinged with unease. The team gathers close, feeling the uncanny stillness that clings to these remains, a silent testament to lives abruptly halted and sealed in sleep-like stasis. The fog seems thicker here, whispers of centuries past folding around them as the peat holds its secrets in a dark, watery embrace. A heavy stone slab groans as it is gently rolled aside, revealing a chamber cloaked in shadows. Within, a human skeleton lies curled in fetal repose beside bleached horse skulls and tarnished silver artifacts, tokens of status and passage. The arrangement is deliberate, a frozen tableau of death and devotion. Bjorn's voice fills the silence, recounting sagas of chieftains interred with their most loyal companions and treasures, their earthly power extending beyond life's threshold. The cold stillness of stone envelops the chamber, mingling with the faint metallic scent rising from relics long untouched. Each bone and artifact speaks, telling of rituals meant to protect and empower the dead. The team moves slowly, bearing witness to this intimate dance between mortality and myth.
As twilight deepens, the dig site glows with lantern light. The team carefully cleans and catalogues the day's finds, bones laid in precise rows, artifacts aligned with care. Bjorn's voice softens with storytelling, weaving the saga echoes into their work. Tales of battles lost and won, of loyalty sworn and shattered. Dr. Ingrid muses on the social hierarchies revealed by the grave goods-rich textiles, weapons and adornments speaking volumes. The night air carries the mingled sense of wood smoke and damp earth, blending with murmured reflections. Around the flickering campfire, science and legend intertwine, grounding ancient stories in tangible evidence and reminding all present that beneath the soil lies a tapestry of human life, death and memory. Encircled by tented screens, the team gathers around a flickering campfire under a star-studded sky. Dr. Ingrid pores over faded runic inscriptions, tracing shapes with delicate fingers. The soft hoot of a distant owl punctuates the quiet night, a fitting accompaniment to their vigil. Shadows dance on canvas walls as embers crackle. A thin veil separates the living from the long departed. Conversations soften. The boundary between past and present seems to blur. Here, amidst whispered lore and flickering light, the dead feel near silent sentinels of history. The vigil is both homage and meditation, a solemn communion between seeker and spirit in the cold embrace of night. Every step sinks slightly in the yielding peat. The faint squelch echoes softly as boots press into the saturated earth. The acrid tang of decaying plant acids lingers sharp and unmistakable, reminding the team of nature's slow reclamation. Moss drips with lingering dew, catching torchlight in tiny prisms, while the wind whispers through tent flaps with ghostly murmurs. This sensory tapestry weaves together earth, water, and air, grounding the diggers in a living memory older than words. The physicality of the bog contrasts with the ethereal stories unfolding around the fire, reminders that beneath the soggy surface lies a vault of secrets preserved by time, waiting patiently to be heard. Magnus's camera lingers on a horsehair bridle swaying gently in the firelight, its strands catching faint flickers of orange glow as if animated by unseen hands. The air is thick with silence, broken only by the crackle of embers and distant calls of nocturnal creatures. This simple artifact becomes a haunting emblem yesterday's companions of the dead, still tethered to the living through memory and ritual. Around the camp, the team prepares to rest, minds heavy with wonder and humility. The boundary between worlds feels thin, a fragile bridge connecting past and present, life and afterlife. In this quiet moment, history breathes a newer, whispered testament to the enduring power of remembrance. Viking boat burials were not private affairs, but grand public spectacles. Massive timber ships, earth mounds towering like monuments, and lavish ritual goods displayed the power and wealth of the deceased for all to witness. These funerals were choreographed performances affirming social order, an unmistakable message to kin and rivals alike. Crowds gathered beneath open skies, their voices rising in solemn chants as funeral pyres roared. The visual of a great ship consumed by fire, surrounded by earth and bone, was awe-inspiring and terrifying. This theatre of death cemented hierarchies, turning burial into an enduring political statement etched in landscape and memory. In this cosmic drama, the dead became potent symbols wielding influence beyond the grave. Sacrifice was central to Viking funerary rites. Horses led to slaughter, prized weapons cast into bogs, and sometimes even humans offered as tribute to gods like Odin and Freya. These acts weren't mere brutality, but sacred transactions, exchanges meant to secure divine favor and maintain cosmic balance. The shedding of blood and relinquishing of wealth underscored the reciprocal relationship between mortals and gods. Ritual feasts accompanied sacrifices, prayers whispered over smoking altars, and the scent of blood mingled with incense. This intertwining of sacrifice and religion reinforced social order, binding earthly power with spiritual mandate. Death became a currency to barter with the divine, ensuring protection, prosperity, and status for both the living and the dead. Bog deposits of enemy weapons and human remains served as brutal warnings to foes. These watery graves were displays of ruthless power, evidence of victory, conquest, and uncompromising justice. The bog's eerie stillness, with rusted swords and shields embedded in peat, broadcast a silent but potent message: resist and face annihilation. This deliberate public spectacle projected dominance across territories, turning the landscape itself into a canvas of fear and control. The cold dampness and muffled echoes of the bog heightened this intimidation, reminding all who dared approach that Viking rule was backed by both spiritual wrath and martial might. These sacrifices transcended death, becoming a strategic extension of political power. Chroniclers and skalds transformed these dramatic burial rites into enduring sagas, weaving history into myth. Songs sung by firelight immortalized chieftains, their deeds and sacrifices embedding their stories in cultural memory. The physical graves became sacred anchors for these narratives, places where past and present converged. Storytellers recounted the rites, battles, and honors bestowed, ensuring that neither valor nor vengeance would fade. These sagas reinforced communal identity and values, elevating burial sites beyond mere resting places to mythic landscapes where legacy and lineage intertwined. Through song and story, the dead lived on, their power and example shaping Viking ethos across generations. Dr. Sigrid Thompson, anthropologist, highlights how Viking burial sites functioned as deliberate, political propaganda monuments asserting divine favor and social rank. These graves were more than resting places. They were death stage performances designed to outlast the living. She explains, the scale, spectacle, and symbolic artifacts broadcast messages to rivals and rallied kinship ties. Excavations reveal the meticulous choreography behind each burial power displayed in death as much as in life. This understanding reframes graves as active agents in Viking political theatre, wielding influence through fear and awe. The intersection of archaeology and anthropology sheds light on how ritualized death cemented social cohesion and deterred challengers in a world ruled by might and myth.
Dr. Sigrid Thompson, anthropologist, highlights how Viking burial sites functioned as deliberate political propaganda monuments, asserting divine favor and social rank. These graves were more than resting places. They were death stage performances designed to outlast the living, she explains. The scale, spectacle, and symbolic artifacts broadcast messages to rivals and rallied kinship ties. Excavations reveal the meticulous choreography behind each burial power displayed in death as much as in life. This understanding reframes graves as active agents in Viking political theatre, wielding influence through fear and awe. The intersection of archaeology and anthropology sheds light on how ritualized death cemented social cohesion and deterred challengers in a world ruled by might and myth. In Viking culture, death was not an end, but a continuation of social and cosmic order performed through elaborate ritual. Graves acted as stages where power, fear, and faith intertwined, binding the living and dead in mutual obligation. The living performed for gods and neighbors alike, ensuring legacies through awe-inspiring final acts that transcended mortality. These burial sites, imbued with sacrifice and spectacle, shaped collective identity and reinforced authority. They remind us that for Vikings, might was ritualized beyond the grave, a potent blend of political statement and spiritual transcendence. The boundary between life and death blurred, revealing a society where death's performance secured life's order. Burial rites fostered community bonds, turning grief into a shared experience that transcended death. Elaborate ceremonies and communal participation forged solidarity among kin and clans. Through ritual mourning song, feasting, and offerings, the living reaffirmed collective identity and social hierarchies. These acts of remembrance and honor provided emotional catharsis and social stability, knitting together groups facing the uncertainties of a harsh world. The shared process of honoring the dead reinforced mutual obligations and trust, essential in Viking clan politics. Mourning became both a personal and public act, intertwining memory and identity to fortify social cohesion. Burial layouts echoed Viking cosmology boats, symbolized passage to the afterlife. Animal sacrifices reflected the cycles of nature, and runic inscriptions invoked protective deities. Graves were microcosms of cosmic order, embodying beliefs about fate, life, and death. These symbolic arrangements served dual purposes. They ensured safe passage for the deceased and acted as talismans for the living. The interweaving of earthly rites with spiritual symbolism maintained balance between realms, reinforcing the interconnectedness of human and divine. Through these burial practices, Vikings sought harmony between the material and the supernatural, anchoring their place within a vast cosmic tapestry. Threshold stones, carved with powerful runes, stood as silent sentinels at burial entrances. These inscriptions were more than decoration. They were curses crafted to ensnare and doom grave robbers. The runes bound intruders in spiritual chains, invoking divine wrath upon any who disturbed sacred rest. Weathered by time, yet pulsing with ancient intent, these stones formed an invisible barrier, a supernatural guard against desecration. The flickering torchlight cast dancing shadows over their jagged symbols, and beneath the murmurs of ritual chants, an eerie tension rose. This fusion of stone and spell ensured that the sanctity of the dead was fiercely protected, transforming the grave's threshold into a liminal battleground between the living and the otherworldly. Some Viking burial sites reveal a startling pattern: body parts offered separately across sacred spaces. Arms might rest in one pit, legs in another, each dedicated to a particular deity or ritual purpose. This piecemeal sacrifice reflected a sophisticated spiritual framework where gods ruled distinct domains of death and rebirth. Such fragmentation was a deliberate act, channeling specific energies and favor. Archaeological overlays show these offerings arranged with care, intertwined with weapon shards and votive objects. Whispered incantations would have accompanied these acts, rhythmic hammering sealing each piece's fate. The practice reveals a layered cosmology, where death's rites were intricately segmented to appease and empower multiple divine forces simultaneously, underscoring a meticulous ritual devotion that transcended simple burial. Certain vaulted tombs were crafted not only for shelter but as acoustic chambers designed to magnify chants and funeral rites. Their curved stone ceilings and narrow passages transformed simple prayers into enveloping echoes that stirred deep primal emotions. This deliberate sonic design made ritual moments immersive and terrifying, binding mourners and the dead in shared awe. The reverberations morphed spoken words into haunting symphonies that resonated with power. 3D renderings of tomb interiors reveal how sound waves traveled, while reenacted chanting fills these reconstructed spaces, immersing listeners in spiritual communion. This architecture of sound amplified rituals, psychological impact, transforming the tomb from a silent resting place into a living vessel of collective memory and fear. Vikings harnessed the natural chemistry of peat bogs, acidic, cold, and oxygen-starved to preserve bodies in astonishing lifelike detail. This natural pickling slowed decomposition, mummifying flesh and retaining delicate features for centuries. The watery graves acted as time capsules, maintaining power over corporeal form and aiding the soul's journey. Close-ups of well-preserved bog bodies reveal skin, hair, and even tattoos, evoking profound awe at nature's eerie handiwork. The slow drip of water into soil and the misty, earthy scents linger around these sites, underscoring the delicate balance between life and decay. Exploiting this mortuary magic, Vikings turned natural processes into ritual tools, ensuring that death remained a dynamic stage for spiritual potency. Professor Leif Gunnarsson explains that Viking burial sites were experimental spaces, merging architecture, chemistry, and ritual psychology to harness death's symbolic power. Every grave was a laboratory, testing how environment and ceremony could shape memory and awe. He notes. Dr. Navin Patel adds that these ritual spaces rewired communal perceptions of fear, transforming raw terror into structured ceremony that reinforced social order. The interplay of physical design and spiritual intention created potent experiences that extended beyond death. Interviews intercut with archaeological footage and diagrams illustrate how ritualized death functioned as cultural engineering, an ancient, multifaceted system, blending the material and the mystical to preserve power and meaning. A slow, reverent pan sweeps through a digitally reconstructed tomb chamber, shadows flickering over rune-carved walls and ancient bones. The space vibrates with unseen presence, ritual power lingering in the cold stone air. Raven feathers rest beside rusted iron blades, and candlelight pulses softly, illuminating the threshold between worlds. The ambient drone of whispered prayers fades into silence, inviting viewers to contemplate death's enduring mystery. This silent echo embodies the fusion of magic, fear, and remembrance that defined Viking funerary practice, timeless ritual theatre where life's final act was crafted with care, intent, and awe. Modern military cemeteries like Arlington National stand as solemn tributes to sacrifice, with their endless rows of white headstones and fluttering flags, creating a landscape of order and reverence. These spaces embody a nation's collective mourning and honor, turning individual loss into shared memory. In contrast, Viking ship burials staged sacrifice in a grand, fiery spectacle, long ships ablaze as warriors, horses, and goods were sent to the afterlife amid smoke and flame. Both cultures dramatized death, transforming mortality into a performance that asserted identity, valor, and belonging. Whether through meticulous rows of stone or blazing funeral pyres, the act of honoring the fallen bridges, past and present, shaping cultural memory in indelible ways. Throughout history, victorious warriors have displayed spoils as symbols of triumph and offerings to deities. Vikings cast captured weapons and armor into bogs as sacred deposits, believed to transfer earthly victories into divine favor. These watery graves stood as grim monuments to conquest and power, warning enemies of the ruler's reach. Today, captured tanks, flags, and artillery are enshrined in museums and war memorials, transforming instruments of destruction into symbols of national pride and remembrance. Both practices consecrate martial success, turning spoils of war into enduring testimonies of valor and dominance. This shared impulse to immortalize conquest reflects humanity's need to make meaning from conflict, elevating victory beyond the battlefield. Funerary architecture conveys power and permanence. Viking burial mounds, massive earthworks crowning timber, ship's command, landscapes, signaling lineage and legacy to all who pass. These earthen monuments mirror modern mausolea and monumental tombs in scale and symbolism. Both forms mark the boundary between mortal life and eternal memory, towering reminders of status and reverence. The imposing presence of these structures weaves physical and spiritual authority, proclaiming an enduring connection to ancestors and territory. Whether hewn stone or raised earth, these markers transform death into a public testament of power and remembrance, enduring across generations. Death rituals have evolved into cultural spectacles, blending grief with celebration. Dia de los Muertos, for example, transforms mourning into vibrant festivities with marigolds, colorful altars, and communal storytelling. Viking burial reconstructions attract tourists eager to witness ancient rites brought to life. Mixing education with fascination for the both customs create shared spaces where mortality is confronted openly, fostering connection through ritualized remembrance. These events bridge past and present, allowing communities to engage with death as a living cultural force, blending solemnity, spectacle, and continuity. Dr. Emma Clark, a social historian, reflects on how monuments and death rituals evolve yet fulfill the same fundamental need to dramatize, sacrifice, and honor the dead. Sociologist Dr. Navin Patel discusses how modern memorials curate narratives, shaping collective memory, much like Viking graves, deducing stones, symbols, and ceremonies to tell stories transcending individual lifespans. These experts highlight the continuity of human responses to death, emphasizing rituals' power to connect generations and forge identity. Through stones and steel, song and silence, memory lives on as an active, shared ritual across time and culture. Visual, Viking burial sites shock, with their raw spectacle, death staged as cosmic theater blending sacrifice, power, and fear. Yet they echo modern memorials' deeper purpose, to shape memory and identity beyond the grave. Whether mound, monument, or ceremony, humans seek to immortalize loss and forge continuity through ritualized remembrance. The flicker of candlelight at a modern vigil, the towering silhouette of a burial mound at sunset, both testify to this timeless impulse. These memorials link past and present, personal and collective, grounding us in a shared human journey where death's meaning is both made and preserved. Sunrise breaks softly over a mist-laden field dotted with ancient burial mounds. Ravens circle high above, their dark silhouettes cutting across pale morning light. The landscape feels both timeless and solemn, a vast bonescape holding whispers of forgotten rituals. These Viking gravesboat mounds, bog pits, hidden chambers, were once centers of ritual terror and cosmic power. Though now silent, they still speak across the centuries, telling tales of sacrifice, authority, and humanity's enduring dance with death. Dr. Ingrid, her hands steady yet reverent, replaces a carved oar plank into the barrow, sealing it once more beneath earth and memory. Magnus brushes peat from his boots, the weight of the day's discoveries settling on him, witness to rites that continue to chill bones and stir imaginations alike. Death was their grandest performance. By unearthing these graves, we enter a macabre stage, where every artifact is a prop, every shadow a story, and every echo a link to a drama older than memory itself. Next time you stand among quiet headstones or pass by an unmarked hill, remember, centuries ago, people crafted theaters of death, designed not just to rest the dead, but to terrify, to honor, and to transcend. A close-up of a rune-inscribed wooden plank catching the first golden rays of dawn, a silent testament bridging past and present, life and afterlife, fear and reverence.